Hi, everybody, and welcome to That CBD Show here from the studios of WeBeam TV. I'm Christy Burkhead, and with me today is Drew Burkhead. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about CBD and concussions. We're going to discuss CBD and anxiety. And we're also going to talk a little bit about one of our boosters that is called the Ultra Edge. So we've got a few things to cover today.
Yeah, hopefully if we could get time to the edge and squeeze
We'll
it in.
try.
We'll see how many side roads we take on this. We were just talking before we started filming today that we have all our papers and our notes out here. We're a lot of self-research, self-study, and really put our own hands and time into this business and this product, and so we're bringing that all to you today. This is kind of like our little war room. So, but before we kick off, the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, we've talked about them before. The U.S. Hemp Roundtable is a group that has really been a part of this development and getting hemp passed through the Farm Bill here just recently in the last part of last year. So Jonathan Miller, he's the lead attorney for this group. He's the one who all his accolades go about this far, and I just stop reading them.
Right.
There's so many things that this guy's been involved in, but he's been really a leader and a voice for this group. So now that the hemp farm bill is passed, there's a group called the U.S. Hemp Authority that they have now.
Really?
Yeah, put together. And so the U.S. Hemp Authority is really, to me, what it looks like, and watching them and tracking them for this year, is this group that sort of comes out of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and now is going to be this group that sort of comes up and presents himself as one that's putting control and putting guardrails around this industry, because there hasn't been a lot in the hemp industry.
Right.
And that also, of course, starts to reflect into CBD and hemp-based CBD products, which we talk a lot about. So what's happening is now they have put together a standardization protocol. And so companies that are in the hemp business or in the CBD business can apply to this this group, the U.S. Hemp Authority, to see that and show that they match these standards or work to match these standards, and then therefore get this seal of approval from the U.S. Hemp Authority.
Right.
So that's
good housekeeping seal of approval.
Yeah, I mean,
but in an industry that's unregulated, that kind of thing's important. That's
and we knew it was coming. I mean, when we talk about CBD, we know from being on the inside that we see all that stuff. We talk about, like, you can buy CBD at a gas station. I buy gas at a gas station. I don't even go in and buy anything else.
Oh, I've known you to get an energy drink or two once or twice.
Okay, so I've got an energy drink once or two. So, well, now that's before we had the edge, though.
Right, now we have the edge.
Yeah,
that's true.
So all I'm trying to get out on this is that so regulation in the CBD industry is coming, needs to be, because there's a lot of, I call them ankle biters, just companies trying to get in and cash in, some $30 stuff or $40 stuff, and you don't even know what's in it. So they're just those types of companies.
It was grown in China or something.
Oh yeah, so much, and so much, and hemp will pull up things from the soil,
so
and so
gross.
I mean, we talk about how much nutrients are in the hemp-based CBD, over 500 different compounds and components and terpenes and chemicals, and it's a superfood, really. So you really got to be careful with it. So this group, this U.S. Hemp Authority, and they have 175 companies that have submitted in to go through this process.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, so they are going to begin announcing March 1st who has passed this regulation.
Okay.
This group is also providing some scholarships to some smaller companies in the hemp space that maybe can't afford the application process, but they deserve to be in there and in the running. So they've opened that up as well to help bring people into this. So it's just a neat movement.
Okay.
Yeah, just a new news beat, probably the coolest thing in the last week or two, that's happening and taking place. So
it's a good bit of our news and announcements. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we're going to jump into concussions, and I'm going to circle back to Dr. David Allen. The retired cardiac physician.
Talking about concussions now?
Well, I just wanted to say, why is it that we don't know about CBD, and why is it that we don't know about the endocannabinoid system and the things that we talk about on this show? And I just wanted to circle back to Dr. David Allen, very cool guy. He's a retired cardiovascular physician, and he's dedicated his life to the study and research of the ECS system. And when someone like him says that the endocannabinoid system, it handles homeostasis, and it's basically going to save more lives than are currently saved by surgery.
So than the discovery of surgical technique, sterile surgical technique. That's really, by a surgeon saying that. That's crazy.
Yeah, he understands what this system is all about, and
Yeah.
that it's balancing homeostasis in the body. So, but what I want to point out to him is that he took it upon himself to do a research project, and he reached out to 157 medical schools in the United States,
Right.
basically all of them at the time that he did this study. And he had a series of questions that he was asking them that included, some of these were, do you have a director of an ECS or science program? Now, the ECS system is what CBD interacts with, so that's important. So he's asking, do you have a director of ECS sciences? Is there an endocannabinoid department? Are there any organized courses specific to the ECS, and some more? And what happened was only 13% of the medical schools even
mention
spoke
it,
about the ECS system and what's going on. So 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, when you're looking at these films or videos of us, you might think, well, they were a little bit ahead in getting the information out there at that time. But eventually, ultimately, this is going to be more of a mainstream and understanding in our medical groups. And we're working a lot more with medical doctors.
We are working with doctors, which has
That's
been
all
a real
primarily what
privilege.
we've been doing since the beginning of January.
That has been exciting. It's been, a really unique learning experience and a real privilege to work with these doctors, because it helps us to reach a lot more people with this, which is great.
Yeah, and we kind of
And
start.
it's fun to find the doctors that get it.
So we're talking about concussions.
Yeah.
You had let in that we were going to talk about that. It's just something that kind of stood out with CBD and concussions. And so when we talk about that, I think sports. Just my mind goes directly to
Absolutely.
sports.
Right.
And then so just to a caveat to this, or in addition to this, is that when it comes to CBD, the World Health Organization has already signed off on CBD and said that it's fine. Athletes should use it, could use it, or people could use it. And the World Health Organization is really tied into health and well-being of everyone globally,
Right.
United Nations too, and they're tied in. So it's a lot of credibility when they came through. So World Health Organization approved it, and then just also to the big three, we were talking about that. The big three is the new
The
NBA,
new basketball thing. It's just crazy.
3-on-3 basketball.
Really neat. Yeah.
So they've said, it's good, and I think we'll see more of the sports.
Sure. Yeah.
Leagues.
Yeah. Right now,
being
it's
more lenient,
more
even
the,
NCAA.
More
and
the ancillary. They're professional sports, but they're ancillary. The 3-on-3 is kind of a separate league. You may see it fall with arena football, and then as the big ones really start to accept it, that's when we're going to see something cool.
Yeah.
NFL and NHL, they need it.
And I don't know what some of those tests are for CBD at the professional level, like how deep they're testing that, because the company that we continue to talk about when we talk about
Right.
a top level product of Zalise, I mean it's non-detectable in drug tests that we can.
We've seen it over and over again. Yeah, over and over again.
So I don't know what would keep a professional athlete from being able to take this product where you get all the cannabidiol,
Because
but
I
you're not getting the THC read.
I understand that some, some of the tests actually test for CBD.
Yeah. I've
So
heard
I
that
don't
too.
know if that's across the board in professional sports, but some drug tests pull out CBD, and if you're positive, you're going to get popped for that.
I think it's kind of a moot point though with the passing of the Hemp Act, right? And
Well, not yet,
CBD and derived products from hemp less than 0.3%.
Right, but if you're part of an organization, like
they have their own self-governance.
right, because
sure.
even in states where marijuana is legal, the NFL and the NHL, they're all still testing for marijuana. So if you play
Right.
for the Colorado Rockies or play for the Denver Broncos, you still can't partake of that, even though it's legal in your state. You can't do it. So
I think NHL is probably going to be one of the ones that is maybe
they're more progressive.
first.
Too,
NBA
is pretty progressive.
I think hockey's the hardest sport out there.
It's gotta be.
You can do anything, but then you have to put on a pair of ice skates and do it.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah.
But we're
Concussions. I mean, what are we finding
Well-
that CBD is helpful for people that have had concussions, or
Well-
it's not preventative?
let's take a look at it. I mean,
Okay.
one thing that I was thinking sports immediately when it
Sure,
came to
me too.
So I'm
I've had a
thinking
few
concussion, brain
concussions
injury
from
sports.
sports,
Oh, I know I have.
Yeah.
Traumatic brain injury is one of the leading causes of death worldwide in individuals under the age of 45.
Wow. Okay. So car accidents and things
Exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Triggered by concussion from car accidents, falls, violent contact sports, explosives, or by gunshot and stab wounds. And I don't mean
to giggle, but I'm just thinking people. Explosives.
What's that?
I was just the idea of it being explosives was funny.
Okay. So TBI affects 1.7 million Americans annually, and it is the most commonly identified cause of epilepsy amongst adults.
I had no idea. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought epilepsy was just congenital. Like, you either had it or you don't.
Yeah, apparently that's...
So you can
it's-
get it.
Yeah, so...
All right, that's new.
So I dug into this a little bit about CBD and what was out there. And, of course, when we talk about CBD, that's an acronym. It's
Right.
part and a component of the full spectrum
Hemp.
plant. And when we talk about CBD, we use that. We want to say that we are specifically us. We're talking about when we're talking about taking it or taking a product, we're talking about a full spectrum hemp CBD plant with full spectrum hemp CBD, which has CBD in it, but then it has a myriad of other cannabinoid components to it, and then it has on top of that magnesium and terpenes and flavonoids and all that
Right.
above. All that above.
All
So
that
that being
important
said, CBD normalizes post-ischemic heart arrhythmia and limits the size of damaged brain tissue in mice when administered shortly before or after a closed head injury. A lot of words, a lot of big
Right,
words
so
there.
in other words, if you're taking CBD daily and you are like me and you ice skate and you get a concussion, it could limit the damage that concussion could cause because I'm already taking it?
Yes,
Is that
you're
right?
going to have a stronger baseline.
Wow.
I mean, you're going to have a stronger a baseline and balance
Mm-hmm.
of your endocannabinoid system, if you're supplementing it. But there's some things in here, too, as far as there's a window, there's some time afterwards, after an event happens, that even if you haven't been taking it,
you can.
that you could take it. So I was, as I'm looking at this and starting
Wow.
to step back and read this, and we'll keep talking and get the emphasis across to you all, but that, if I was a coach and on the sideline, I would have
that.
I would
there.
have this.
Yeah. Somebody,
Here.
Right.
And what the product that we have with CBD, and we've already gone through this, but that's the part of the plant, specifically the hemp plant, that produces no intoxicating effects.
Right.
No intoxicating effects. Now, does it produce anything mentally? Yeah.
Oh, it does a lot mentally. Right. Absolutely.
Balance and stabilization and calm. So
Mood elevation, it's excellent for that.
yeah, so when your body's kind of regulating and working with it, there are effects, but there aren't psychotropic,
psychotropic effects,
or
which is very
intoxicating
different.
effects,
Yeah.
like a high. And the other thing is that it does not lead to tolerance. And that's another thing I think we've talked about, and we've personally experienced with the CBD too, is that as we take it,
Right. Yeah, you don't build up a tolerance with the drug. You just have to take more and more of it. I've seen it with things over the years. Just this works for a while, a half a pill works for a while, but a year later you're taking a whole pill, and 2 years later you've got to take two. So with the CBD, I've gradually decreased my dose where now I'm just a little under a half a dose a day out of that bottle. That bottle lasts me a couple months.
yeah,
So, that I love that. It restarts your system. It kicks it back up and makes your body make those endocannabinoids and keeps your body from eating them so that your system's working more efficiently. You don't need as much of it.
yeah. And I think people get tripped up over dose. Of course you do. And of course they do, because there's so much
A lot of confusion.
out there, hence our show, why we're here, talking about it. But, a half a dose of the Ultracell
Right.
could be 15 times more powerful than or more of a
Right.
dose of
Just
another
something
product.
else that's an oil.
Yes, simply because this company understands that there's a limited absorption rate of CBD oil when you take it. I've read 6%. I've read 10%.
Yeah, I think the highest I've ever seen is about 10% in an oral taking of an oil.
Right. Right, but let's just say it's 10%. So
Yeah.
you spend $10 on a CBD oil, you get $1 in your system. I mean, it's like just going to the gas pump and pumping all the gas out on the ground and then putting that one last gallon in
exactly.
your car. It's just so wasteful. So with this, extremely powerful, because you get up to 94% absorption in that with the bioavailability.
Yep.
But so 4 to 6 million Americans are on disability because of traumatic brain issues.
Wow.
And right now, the treatment modalities for traumatic brain issues are limited. They're limited with a few satisfactory pharmaceutical options available. Surgical intervention which entails the removal of parts of the skull to reduce intracranial pressure. And it's an emergency life-saving measure
that, I would
after
say
the
usually after an accident.
yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
the brain swells.
after.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start throwing out some topics of discussion. Now I'll come back and say, as yet there have been no FDA-approved clinical trials to determine the efficacy of CBD-rich cannabis oil extracts for traumatic brain injury. I don't know of any, and can't quote any here, but we're just going to kind of walk through and see what sort of happened in history and maybe some stories. And so in 1998, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences published a groundbreaking report on the neuroprotective properties of cannabidiol. And basically what came out of it was a U.S. government-held patent on cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants.
Okay, so in other words, like a coating on the nerves to protect the nerves and the firing of the brain neurons?
Yeah, the patent indicates that CBD and THC, in this instance, but CBD was found to have a particular application as a neuroprotectant in limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults such as stroke or trauma.
Okay, yeah, I knew it was a big deal with the stroke. I know we have actual studies on that, but trauma, okay.
And there's
so that would
more.
be anywhere in the body, not just brain, but trauma.
Well, that's true.
Okay.
That's true. So one thing that I've kind of picked up along the way is that when you experience trauma and you have an event that happens, you don't necessarily get an influx or an increase of the CB1 receptor, which is what the THC binds to. But you will get an increase, or there'll be an awakening of CB2 receptor in the body. And that can happen at a local level too.
Right.
So,
okay.
all right.
So if somebody just punches me in the arm, then pretty much immediately my body will start making more CB2 receptors in that
That's
area.
what I've read. That's what I understand. And they're asking for that help and that balance, because now you've got something where there's now going to be
inflammation,
swelling, or whatever's going to take place. So your body's going to immediately try to balance that. And there's under inflammation, there's over inflammation.
Sure.
There's a right amount. That's kind of what the story is with anything that we talk about with this, is there's a right amount, and that's what the system that works with CBD is balancing in the body. So, but also it says they're useful for treating other neurodegenerative conditions.
Easy for you to say.
Such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and HIV dementia.
Okay. So if you've got a kid, a kid playing some kind of contact sport specifically, or just riding a scooter on a regular basis, if you're not giving them CBD every day, having it around, it sounds like it's certainly help if they have some sort of issue.
Yeah. TBI, traumatic brain injuries and stroke, are both acute and potentially lethal injuries. They involve a primary ischemic insult that interrupts this blood flow in the brain. It destroys brain tissue. A lot of bad stuff happens, but it's followed by a secondary injury cascade, to your point. So after this happens, there's weeks or months of time that's happening where if things go unchecked or they're not supported, or they can result in more brain damage, motor impairment, and other downstream effects.
Yeah, I've seen that happen to
shows
someone
up
before.
as poor concentration, irritability, and sleep problems.
Yeah, like a concussion, and they were fine, and then it was weeks and weeks later before, I started going and diminished in one side, and a couple other little issues.
Yeah. And so there is a 2014 article. It's in the American Surgeon periodical. It examined individuals that had actually been on marijuana before a traumatic brain incident, and it showed that a positive THC screen was associated with decreased mortality in adult patients sustaining traumatic brain injuries.
That's impressive.
So that was kind of one of, maybe not the first, but one of the first recognitions. But they were using THC as a benchmark. And then, according to that report, actually a report by UCLA Medical Center scientists, TBI-afflicted individuals who consume marijuana are less likely to die and more likely to live longer than TBI patients who abstain. So there's,
So we're starting to see some studies. We're right in the very early stages of just any of these studies and any information on cannabis and hemp in general. So that's great.
Yeah, and we circle back to the endocannabinoid system again. in the body. That's
what it
what
is.
matters. That's all the sockets. This stuff is the plug that plugs in and supports that system so that it can do its job. So the ECS regulates several psychological processes that are relevant to traumatic brain injury, such as cerebral blood flow, inflammation, neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to respond, to adapt to new things.
Be flexible.
Yeah.
Okay.
A 2011 article in a British Journal of Pharmacology describes the ECS as a self-protective mechanism that kicks into high gear in response to a stroke or TBI.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. That's why, which is, it's pretty impressive. It'll be exciting to see more and more studies, but I can tell you this, if, I'm around somebody or if I'm having regular contact sports or whatever, CBD is a great thing to use to protect yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So the interesting thing I kind of saw about this that sort of came out when I was looking at this was, everyone's looking at the marijuana side of things and all. Well, we talk about the Brightfield Group. We talk about the CBD industry, and we talk why we ask that question. Why do we have a show about this? It's because there's so much beginning to be learned when you can start to break CBD out from the plant,
from marijuana, and break it away, the THC.
And start to understand what these different roles are inside of it. You really start to see what the power side of this CBD is, and not taking anything away from the THC. It's just how many of us out there, don't want that psychotropic effect, and if you can get the health benefits, on the CBD side, so
then do that.
There was this initial infatuation, with marijuana, but the scientists then shifted their attention to these CB2 receptors, which is what this is, primarily working with, as a drug development target for treating the traumatic brain issues.
Right.
Okay, so what they're finding is that these CB2 modules are really part of immune function and inflammation. It's primarily expressed in immune cells, metabolic tissue, and the peripheral nervous system.
Okay.
And if they started to kind of look at that and the activity around these CB2 cells, then maybe that's where some of the answers are, where some of the support and health can come from.
Mm-hmm. Wow. All right.
Yeah. Another thing is that what's really interesting is that the CB1 receptor that interacts with THC, and I don't know what this is worse for, it changes throughout the day. And through different various things, time of day and day or night can change the CB1 receptor and its ability to bind, or how much activity is there. And I don't know that there's much knowledge as far as there's so much to learn. But there's a little bit more of just what's going on there. But the CB2 receptor isn't impacted that way. It's a much more stable receptor, and it's much more uniform throughout the body and much more a part of bringing in that balance, and in fact, the CBD that we take and support will actually modulate the CB1 receptor that accepts THC. Will actually kind of like shut it down and normalize it, so that people who are consuming full cannabis, those two work together like yin and yang. The CBD is balancing and keeping that from overreacting in the system with the person.
Right. From somebody getting too psychoactive. If
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's definitely this balancing mechanism, and it seems to be that's working in this concussion realm as well. So other studies have shown that CB2 receptors promote cell repair and cell survival following one of these injuries. So those CB2 cells are there, they're present, they're instrumental in driving neurogenesis, which is the creation of new brain cells. Neurogenesis enhances motor function and overall recovery after a traumatic brain injury.
All right.
And they've been testing this in mice, and then, I think it's starting to come out, through people as well. And then in the sports world, we've talked about this, it's not, yes, you have that for the mental side and that neuroprotection, but the joints and aches and pains and recovery and things like that come.
Yeah, come with being active in sports.
Come along with it. So, there's a lot to cover on this. Obviously, we've been covering all this, and we were going to go into 5 remarkable ways.
A little bit about,
we're not going to have time.
About anxiety, and we can't really get to that. So, understood. I guess we will be able to cover that next time.
Well, before we close out though, and close out on this, these TBI and concussion discussion and CBD, let's just take one last look at, it appears that an exogenous cannabinoid, like our Ultracell, either synthetic or plant-derived, may need to engage both the CB1 and CB2 receptor directly or indirectly. And so what I found from this is that they were talking about CBD as an isolate, like a pulled
Just
out
the
from it,
CBD,
like a
right,
drug.
which we already know isn't a great idea.
Yeah, and we've seen that. We know that there's one on the market, an FDA-approved drug, Epidiolex, I think it goes by, and it's approved.
For seizures for kids.
Yeah. But this article and other research is showing that you can go about that route, but really circling back to that full spectrum, you need that whole entirety of the plant to for your body to be able to assimilate what it needs.
Right. Yeah, you gotta have
because
everything.
not every CBD doesn't solve every issue. It needs all those different components to come in and solve everything that it needs to do. And there's definitely research and findings behind that the whole plant in its entirety is what somebody wants. So.
Yeah, very important. Very important to have all of it. And yeah, and I still don't think you need the THC. I mean, I think it's great, but I don't think it's, I'm not seeing anything that's telling me that's mandatory, except maybe in a couple of issues.
Yeah, not mandatory. I mean, I like the full spectrum hemp CBD oil because it doesn't have the THC. There's so many things that it can serve and do for people. It doesn't have that THC. Yeah, it's still from that family,
still from that
for the
family.
CBD hemp oil.
Well, I guess next time we will have to continue our discussion about anxiety and the Ultra Edge. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time on That CBD Show.
Thank you.